All right, you've been very patient. Let's get going without further ado. So it worked out okay. There's a little bit of bubbles. There's some chunks floating in there, I think, from the mica powder that I used for coloring. That's this stuff. I've got like a variety pack of it, and it's used for dyeing soap or makeup or craft projects like this, and epoxy. And it's just this powdery little stuff. If you don't mix it up enough, you can leave little unmixed bits or chunks or something like that. It also could just be the bubbles. There was lots of bubbles in there. It could be user error from the way that I was mixing the epoxy, or it could just be super cheap epoxy. But let's get this out of the mold, see how it looks. I used this Appel mold release lubricant, which, as you can see, worked flawlessly. Pulled this thing straight out. That's where all my epoxy went. I was noticing that it was shy on the top. I had measured. I now see that it all went and flooded underneath. I suppose that's why some guys put weights on their pieces of wood. I hadn't figured that part out yet. We are learning as we go. Looks pretty cool, and it should look even better once we sand it up. All right, a couple things I learned on this project. One, as I mentioned, you should put weights on the pieces of wood because obviously wood floats and the epoxy is just going to run under your wood, and that's all stuff that you're going to have to plane off. So this board ended up being slightly thinner than I was planning it to be, but it really turned out nice, so I'm not complaining. But all right, so that's number one. Everything else worked really well. I mean, this cheapo mold that I bought off of Amazon worked great. That Appel mold release, I think that was off Amazon too. Super cheap stuff. That worked great. It released right away from the mold. And this epoxy, I swear it's got to be user error. I need to stir it slower, don't introduce the bubbles into it, and maybe babysit it a little bit more with the torch and the heat gun to make those bubbles go away. But otherwise, I mean, this turned out great. I'm impressed.